If a single person is guided by God through you, it will be better for you than a whole lot of red camels. Narrated by Bukhari, a Muslim. Chapter 11. Travelling Master. Introduction. Be in this world as though you are a stranger or traveller. Within numerous religious texts, you will find a variety of benefits on travelling outlined, and these are often divided into three sections: individual, social, and spiritual mental effects. Individually, travelling educates a person and removes the veils of ignorance, thus improving the person's intellect and strengthening his rationale. It has significant influence on the formation of the individual's etiquette and character. Many educated religious scholars, like Imam al-Rabbani and Sayyid Abul Qadir Gilani, who lived from 1077 to 1166, sought to learn through travelling. Socially, the traveller not only forms noble companionship, as Imam al-Sharif from 767 to 820 states, but is also an ambassador for his religion or way of life. Islam spread through trade, not by the sword. People were drawn to our faith because of its simple message of one God and its strong morality and ethics. Lastly, travelling makes one attain spiritual loftiness. Through travel you are continuously invited to have moments of remembrance and reflections of our connection with God. As Jalaluddin Rumi poetically states, "Travel and witness his wonders, lose yourself in awe. When one beholds the wonders of God, abandoning pride and the claims of the ego, contemplating his work, you find your true station. Moreover, fall into the silence concerning the Maker. Then you will say from the depth of your soul, I cannot praise you enough." Hadrat Sahib's travelling can also be divided into three distinct phases. The first phase was to subdue the ego. The second consisted of visits to the old Sangis and shrines, and the third was to guide people in various regions of Kashmir and Pakistan. The journeying was of a perfected master who transmitted knowledge and wisdom wherever he went. At this stage of his life, he did not need to make these arduous journeys. There was no individual or material benefit for him. Indeed, he travelled for the benefit of the people. His life mission was to save souls from falling into misguidance, and by this stage the numbers of the souls that needed saving increased day by day. The people in the northwest frontier were unimpressed by the custodians of the shrines in the Punjab, and were affiliated with reformist groups such as the Deobandis. Hadrat Sahib did not think on sectarian lines. His primary concern was that people should stay in touch with the holy people and gain guidance from them. As such, he travelled from place to place in constant transit, with only pit stops, moving on with focus and a clear mission in mind. What do I have to do with this worldly life? I and this worldly life are but like a traveller who stopped for a little while under a tree to get some shade, and then moved on. Northwest Frontier. In the summer of 1969, Hadrat Sahib set off on a long journey from Gulhar Sharif with selected Sangis. On the way there were two mosques in the city, the Sunni and the Salafi. Hadrat Sahib proposed to split the group into two. One group would pray at the Sunni mosque, the other at the Salafi mosque. One Sangi suggested it was better to pray in the same mosque. A lady mystic sat nearby and commented, "Go in one direction." Hadrat Sahib construed that they should pray in the Sunni mosque. After the prayer, the Imam informed the people that the mosque was under construction and requested everyone to bring some stones from the bottom of the hill. Hadrat Sahib instructed the Sangis to bring the heavier and better quality stones which were further away. Later, Hadrat Sahib met one of the students of the mosque and asked him about the activities that took place. They had tea before setting off to the next stop. Hadrat Sahib always encouraged the Sangis to be part of any good activity that took place. In his view, these moments were opportunities that were sent by God. Along the way, the group stayed at a guest house situated in a sub-zero climate. Hadrat Sahib sat under a tree and read his litanies, then prayed in the city mosque, before travelling to Banjosa, a tourist area. As night approached, the persistent rainfall left the dirt track impossible to travel on, so they took an alternative route to reach their destination. Due to the muddy road, the car could not be driven to the mosque, so Hadrat Sahib offered his prayers in the car. After the prayers, the Sangis went to a hotel to eat, then brought some milk and rice for Hadrat Sahib to eat in the car. Although the rain subsided, it was still icy cold, so Hadrat Sahib went to sleep in the mosque, which had only one old quilt. The next day they set off again and visited a shrine where Hadrat Sahib read Al-Fatiha. At the next town the Sangis ate food, and Hadrat Sahib had only milk and dried chapati. The mint which the Sangis gathered earlier before arriving in Banjosa was used to make tea. In this area lived a Sangi who had built a mosque, and the Sangis expected Hadrat Sahib to stay there. Hadrat Sahib commented that he did not want the Sangi's family to know he was in the area. However, the Sangi's wife found out and sent 2 people from the mosque to request Hadrat Sahib to come to her house for food. Hadrat Sahib agreed on the condition that it did not take long to make the food. After the afternoon prayer, Hadrat Sahib went to the Sangi's house for tea. Though the Sangi was away on business, his wife was anxious to inform him of Hadrat Sahib's arrival, but Hadrat Sahib told her not to disturb her husband. The next stop was the city of Muzaffarabad. Hadrat Sahib went to the shrine of Saint Suhaili Sarkar and offered his prayers before staying at a mosque. He instructed the Sangis to eat food from the local hotel. The following day they travelled to Balakot, where Sayyid Ahmad Barelwi, who died in 1831, and Shah Ismail Dalawi, who died in 1831, are buried. During the colonial period, these 2 were martyred while in jihad against the Sikh rule. Hadrat Sahib read Al-Fatiha for their souls. He met an old man and asked him about the history of the graves. The old man related the story of their martyrdom. Hadrat Sahib commented that a saint said, "A person does not always go to attain blessings from a shrine. Sometimes he goes to give benefits." Hadrat Sahib meant that he was not visiting these graves to attain any blessing. Shah Ismail was the grandson of the great Shah Wali Allah, who died in 1762, who had close links to the Kanka Sharif in Delhi, and it was due to this link that Hadrat Sahib visited the graves and prayed for the 2. Due to these journeys, this region's residents, who previously were strongly influenced by anti-Sufi movements, met Hadrat Sahib and gradually accepted the moderate version of Sufism represented by him. Some of the people became Sangis and visited Hadrat Sahib in Kotli. In Hadrat Sahib's view, the people in Northwest Frontier had strong links with saints of the past, but unfortunately they had not met any living saint, hence their faith in such concepts dwindled over time. Finally, Hadrat Sahib arrived at the Ahmad Jan Mosque in Rawalpindi, where he previously spent 9 months in 1966. Initially, Ahmad Jan, who was from Peshawar, did not believe in saints, but gradually became a sincere devotee of Hadrat Sahib. When he saw Hadrat Sahib arrive, he was delighted and brought all his children to meet him. Ahmad Jan invited Hadrat Sahib to his daughter's wedding, and he accepted his invitation. Hadrat Sahib rarely attended any weddings, but out of compassion for Ahmed Jan and his family, he went with presents for the bride. Naturally, the presence of a saint at any wedding brings great blessings for the newlyweds. It is believed that wherever the pious people are physically present, God's mercy and grace descends there. Lahore. Hadrat Sahib made numerous journeys to Lahore to visit Data Sahib. During one of his visits, he stayed in a little mosque. Two groups of students from Faisalabad, under the supervision of Mufti Muhammad Amin, who died in 2018, were fed before going in turns to meet him for blessings. Later, Hadrat Sahib advised Mufti Muhammad Amin to take all the students on foot to Data Darbar for the midday prayer before walking to the coach station. After the prayers, some students suggested to Mufti Muhammad Amin to hire a minibus to the coach station to save time, which he accepted. As they were travelling to the bus station, they noticed Hadrat Sahib walking towards Data Darbar. When Mufti Muhammad Amin got off the minibus at the bus station, he realised that someone had picked his pockets. Mufti Muhammad Amin smiled and said, "We were punished twice for disobeying orders. Firstly, we missed the opportunity to meet Hadrat Sahib again, and secondly, the fare money was stolen." When a saint instructs you to do something, it is advisable to follow the stipulated guidelines. Those who act accordingly reap the benefits spiritually and physically. Often it is the case that those who are heedless of the saint's instruction face difficulties as misfortune befalls them. All this teaching is from the saint themselves and has great benefit for the students. As Shah Wali Allah, who lived from 1703 to 1762, states, "People often think commandments or instructions in Islam are similar to a master ordering his servant to lift a stone or touch a tree in order to test his obedience. That in this there is no purpose except to impose a test, so that if the servant obeys, he is rewarded, and if he disobeys, he is punished. This view is completely incorrect." Like this, Hadrat Sahib sought to ensure people benefit from the instructions he gave during his travels, as this was part and parcel of his mission, saving souls. Sahib Sharif. Hadrat Sahib had visited Sahib Sharif since the early 1940s. In February 1977, some Sanghis travelled to Lahore with Hadrat Sahib to join a group of 100 pilgrims visiting Sahib Sharif from Data Darbar. Justice Siddiqui was the head of the Pakistani delegation, and a reception was held in Indian Punjab for the delegation. One of the Sikhs brought up the subject of Muslim-Sikh conflict in Indian history. Justice Siddiqui, who had excellent knowledge of Indian history, said, "We are here on another mission to pay respects to Sheikh Ahmad Sahindi." He refuted the Sikh's claim and gave exact details of the events with full references. When the coaches reached Sahib Sharif, many people from occupied Kashmir awaited the arrival of Hadrat Sahib. It is baffling that they knew Hadrat Sahib would be arriving because no announcement had been made. They came specifically to meet and give bay'ah to Hadrat Sahib. Hadrat Sahib's routine at the shrine was to sit and recite the Holy Quran. 10-day trip. During the 1980s, Hadrat Sahib began to build mosques in the Kotli region. He designed the mosques, hired builders, and gave them detailed instructions. Each mosque was built on a strategic point. The local villagers who did not have the resources for such projects came to Hadrat Sahib and pleaded with him to construct a mosque in their area. One such area was Tatapani, or Hot Spring. On the 8th of September 1981, Hadrat Sahib travelled from Kotli to Tatapani with Hafiz Aslam. The primary purpose of this trip was to check the mosques under construction and select locations for future mosques. After staying in the town's mosque, he asked Kari Tufail, a local Sanghi, about a local shrine. After learning it was nearby, he visited the shrine, where 2 saints are buried. He prayed and read Al-Fatiha at the shrine. Hadrat Sahib believed that both the mosques and Sufi shrines should be the source of guidance for people. He was entirely against turning shrines into dens of sinful activities. In his view, the most important place was the mosque. Thus, he built more mosques than shrines. The following day, Hadrat Sahib set off for another journey. On the way, he offered his prayers at a Sanghi's house. If Hadrat Sahib offered his prayers in someone's house, it was viewed as a great honour. Following Hadrat Sahib's visit, the family's situation would improve and they would attribute their prosperity to him. However, Hadrat Sahib never took any credit for such events and would dismiss the notion that it was due to him. He abandoned pride and any claims of the ego. The local people, however, wholeheartedly believed in the concept of barakah, blessing, and would see Hadrat Sahib as a source for their good fortune. This visit was then followed by a challenging mountain trek. Hadrat Sahib rested on the way and asked for a drink of water. So a Sanghi went to our house and brought a glass of water, which he drank sitting down. The local people would single out any places where Hadrat Sahib stopped, even for a moment, as a holy space. Hadrat Sahib continued his journey and reached the mosque, which was under construction. He spent 2 nights and meticulously inspected the building work. Afterwards, he went through the jungle to another mosque. On the way, he observed the houses of some Sanghis. There was a spring nearby, and he liked the location, which indicated that he thought it was an excellent location for a mosque in the future. Hadrat Sahib returned to the central mosque in Tatapani and spent the night there. The next day, Hadrat Sahib inquired from Kari Tufail about his home, and he humbly replied that it was nearby. Hadrat Sahib set off on foot with him towards it. Then, on the way, he remarked, "Oh dear, we have come empty-handed. The old people used to say, 'Never go to anyone's home empty-handed.'" So Hadrat Sahib sent him to the market with money to buy gifts for his home. In the meantime, Hadrat Sahib continued towards Kari Tufail's home. Playing the host to Hadrat Sahib was considered the ultimate honour for a Sanghi. Kari Tufail was a learned and faithful Sanghi who must have prayed to God to be granted such an honour. Hadrat Sahib noticed a spring and some trees near Kari Tufail's home and advised him not to cut them. The following day, Hadrat Sahib went to the mosque near Tatapani, which had a small shrine of a female saint. After breakfast, Hadrat Sahib advised Kari Tufail, who had brought the food, to return the utensils home. Hadrat Sahib was aware that if the appliances were left in the mosque unattended, they might be damaged or even go missing. Such were his concern for the Sanghi's welfare. Hadrat Sahib then set off on another journey, accompanied by Kari Tufail, Hafiz Aslam, and a local imam called Fakir. Hadrat Sahib mentioned to Fakir that he should not introduce him to anyone. This was the practice of Hadrat Sahib during his journeys, to be discreet and rather be known as a dervish without giving specific details. They set off, and the first local person who knew Fakir asked, "Who is this holy person?" He replied, "This is Hadrat Sahib from Chechen Sharif." Hadrat Sahib said to him, "This is the point of separation between you and me," and sent him back. On the way, Hadrat Sahib saw a small mosque under construction and enquired who oversaw this project. He was informed about the person, and so he sent Kari Tufail to bring him. But the person was uninterested in the matter, stating he would come later. The village people tend to have their priorities. Hadrat Sahib patiently waited at the mosque before the man eventually came. Hadrat Sahib advised him that this area needed a big mosque that would meet the needs of future generations. However, the man was arrogant and said, "We will be lucky if we completed this small mosque," and was heedless of Hadrat Sahib's advice. Hadrat Sahib prayed in the mosque and continued his journey. Over time, the responsibility of this mosque was passed on to Hadrat Sahib, and he built a large mosque to cater for the needs of the local people. During the journey, Hadrat Sahib wanted to cross the river, but the boat was tied on the other side. Because it was September, there was little water in the river, and most people just walked across. Hadrat Sahib suffered from Raynaud's syndrome, and if his ankles were exposed to cold water, he would experience severe pain. Aware of this condition, Kari Tufail and Hafiz Aslam walked across to find the boatkeeper. They saw a person cutting grass and enquired about the boatman, who said the boatman was on holiday. They explained that Hadrat Sahib could not walk in the water, so the grass cutter said he would untie the boat to be taken across for Hadrat Sahib. Meanwhile, some local women walked by laughing. "You men are such cowards. Look at us women who are crossing the river without fear." When they finally crossed over, Kari Tufail and Hafiz Aslam began to change their clothes, but Hadrat Sahib continued walking. He walked at such a pace that when the two Sangis reached the road, they couldn't tell which direction Hadrat Sahib had taken. They saw an old man and inquired if he knew the whereabouts of Hadrat Sahib. He said, "Yes, I saw a holy person who wore white clothes with a white turban and shawl on his shoulder." Kari Tufail and Hafiz Aslam ran in that direction and caught up with Hadrat Sahib. Hadrat Sahib walked at a fast pace and read his litanies without talking to anyone. As Hadrat Sahib was walking, a local woman carrying her baby kept requesting Hadrat Sahib to blow upon her sick child. He did not respond to her constant requests, and after a while she shouted in frustration, "Oi, Sheikh, you are not deaf, are you?" Hadrat Sahib replied, "If we were not deaf, why would we be in this state?" Meaning, human beings do not hear the command of their Creator and are indeed deaf to the divine. Hadrat Sahib finally stopped at a few small shops on the road and instructed Kari Tufail and Hafiz Aslam to eat. Kari Tufail went to fetch some water from a nearby spring for Hadrat Sahib to drink. The water was fresh and sweet, which Hadrat Sahib enjoyed. The journey continued to the mosque in the Punch area, where they prayed and rested. The local Sangis found out that Hadrat Sahib had arrived unannounced, and they immediately asked about food. Hadrat Sahib said, "No need for formalities, bring whatever you usually eat. If you have roti and lassi, that will be best." The Sangis brought cornbread and lassi, and Hadrat Sahib ate before resting in the mosque. The next day Hadrat Sahib set off for Tatapani, and the Sangis packed some food for the journey. He returned to the central mosque where the journey started and performed the Friday prayers there, after which he returned to Gulhar Sharif. The last long journey. On the 8th of November 1987, Khalil, Kadi Masum, Hadrat Sahib's nephew, and Fadal Karim set off on a journey with Hadrat Sahib. At midday they came to a cold waterfall. Fadal Karim said to Khalil, "Get some water warmed from a nearby house for Hadrat Sahib." Khalil went and saw a middle-aged woman praying and a young girl sitting next to a stove, so he informed the girl that he had a holy person with him and requested her to warm the water. The girl ignored Khalil's request, and when the woman finished her prayers, she asked the young girl if she had put tea into the kettle, which she had. The woman told her to take the kettle off and put another pot with fresh water on the stove. Khalil took the warm water to Hadrat Sahib, and in return Hadrat Sahib gave Khalil 2 bananas and an apple to give to the woman and the girl. Khalil knew he had only met 2 people and wondered about the apple. He went back to the house and found that the woman was now working in the field with 2 girls. Referring to Hadrat Sahib, the woman asked in the local dialect, "Is he a Malang or mystic?" And Khalil replied, "Yes." Later, Hadrat Sahib wanted to repay the kind gesture of the lady and sent Khalil to inquire if it was possible to build a mosque in the local vicinity. Khalil put forward this proposal to the lady's family, but her father-in-law was not keen on the idea, thus the project never materialized. During the journey, Hadrat Sahib asked Khalil about the Bag area. Hadrat Sahib mentioned that Munshi Jamaluddin migrated to Bag after the partition. He was a very pious Sanghi, Hadrat Sahib remarked. Later, they viewed the houses of Sardar Abdul Qayyum, the former president and prime minister, from a distance. Although Hadrat Sahib never took part in any form of politics, politicians often visited him for prayers. They continued the journey, and on the way Hadrat Sahib mentioned the Dalai camp and stated, "It is said Nehru was kept in this camp." Jawaharlal Nehru was the first Prime Minister of India in 1947 and the political heir of Mahatma Gandhi. In Muzaffarabad, they went to Saint Suhaili Sarkar, where he stayed in the least crowded mosque of the area. Hadrat Sahib always avoided the limelight and preferred seclusion during his travels. When you have the company of God, you are never alone. The next day Khalil went to see Hadrat Sahib, who was resting as Fadal Karim massaged him. After the morning prayer, Hadrat Sahib instructed them to have breakfast at Sanghi Siddiqui's home. Breakfast was brought for Hadrat Sahib in the mosque. He only had a rusk cake and tea. Hadrat Sahib then met Siddiqui and said, "We would like to visit the mosque near the Prime Minister's house." Siddiq took them to the mosque, and Hadrat Sahib liked the prayer mats and instructed Siddiq to take the measurements and inquire about their price. Hadrat Sahib agreed to Siddiq's request to travel in his car, as they later visited a newly designated mosque built by the army. With his young daughter unwell and in need of a doctor, Hadrat Sahib told Siddiq to go back home. He advised Siddiq, "Establish prayer yourself and advise your children, for no one knows about the longevity of life, and a person can only eat what is in his destiny, nothing more." On the journey, when they arrived at Gari Habibullah, Hadrat Sahib mentioned that Imam-e-Rabbani had crossed this area on foot to study in Kashmir. Cited earlier, many saints attain their knowledge and stations through travelling. As the group passed the jungle, Hadrat Sahib informed them that during the Mughal period, the Queen Nur Jahan was travelling in this area and dropped her perfume bottle, and the area became known as the Itar Shishi, or perfumed bottle. Finally, they arrived at Bafa Sharif. The Sheikh of the Kanka and Asangi, Ali Ahmed, was not at home. However, his 2 sons hosted the travellers. As soon as Hadrat Sahib came, the family offered their hospitality, and he commented, "We have had tea, so make food and make sure it is simple as what you normally eat. Nothing extravagant. We are not guests, and we have not come here to check the size of your chapatis." Hadrat Sahib always instructed the host he would eat whatever the family generally prepared for themselves. He did not want to be treated as a special guest for whom a lavish meal is prepared. He was always concerned about the comfort of others and never used these occasions to pamper his ego. He gave presents to the family and the people in the mosque. Upon his return, Ali Ahmed invited Hadrat Sahib to his home for supper. Although he felt unwell, Hadrat Sahib went to please him. then rested inside the mosque as usual. Later that night, Sangi Sardar Yunis turned up. After the night prayer, Khalil spent some time with Hadrat Sahib, and he explained how his spiritual lineage relates to Haj Muhammad of Bafa. In the morning, Khalil was told to take Sardar Yunis to the shrine, as this was his first visit. Khalil tried to explain to Sardar Yunis that when one has a master like Hadrat Sahib, then there is no need to chase other people. They set off from Bafa Sharif to Rawalpindi the following day. During the journey, Hadrat Sahib pointed to a small mosque where Qibla Mai Sahiba had stayed during her visit to Bafa Sharif. Hadrat Sahib rested in a mosque near a telephone factory. It was Wednesday, and Fadal Karim was instructed to find a local Sangi so Hadrat Sahib's clothes could be washed. It was Hadrat Sahib's practice to have clothes cleaned on a Wednesday. He intended to set off, but the local Sangi requested they have food in the mosque. Hadrat Sahib said fine, but make sure it's home-cooked food. Following this, Hadrat Sahib returned towards Kotli, resting for the night in Haji Abad in a mosque under construction. Many local Sangis came to meet Hadrat Sahib, and initially he instructed the Sangis to leave after exchanging greetings. However, Hadrat Sahib's condition changed. He happily allowed the Sangis to meet him in his room and conversed with them for a long time. The Sangis were permitted to leave after the night prayer. Following this, Hadrat Sahib rested for a while, then sat up and conversed with Sangis who were in the mosque. His affection towards the Sangis was evident and based on the love for God. Travelling only enhanced and increased this love within him, which is the reason why he often mentioned them in his discourses, whether educating others or as an exemplar for the next generation of spiritual aspirants.